Good morning. Within 24 hours, two mass shootings, at least 29 people dead, dozens more injured, the latest overnight in Ohio. It came as the nation was still coming to grips with yesterday's carnage at the Walmart in El Paso, Texas. But then a gunman opening fire around 1 a.m. this morning in a popular bar and restaurant district in Dayton, Ohio. The Dayton Daily News confirming 9 deaths in that shooting, 16 others injured. The shooter has been killed. And the FBI investigating what happened at that Walmart in El Paso, Texas. The question, why is this happening so often in America? What can be done? Is there anything that can be done to prevent such horror and heartbreak? And that is where we begin on this Sunday morning, August the 4th. You can join in on the conversation on C-SPAN's Washington Journal. Our phone lines are open and we're dividing them regionally. If you live in the Eastern or Central time zones, here's the number 202-748-8000. And for those of you in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, 202-748-8001. Two mass shootings within 24 hours, 29 dead, dozens more injured. Those shootings in El Paso, Texas, and in Dayton, Ohio. You can also send us a tweet at C-SPAN WJ or join in on the conversation online at facebook.com/cspan. The president tweeting on a couple of the shootings yesterday, including the El Paso shooting, calling it not only tragic, but also an act of cowardice. I know that I stand with everyone in this country to condemn today's hateful act. There are no reasons or excuses that will ever justify killing innocent people. And in Dallas, Texas, this from KERA-TV, pointing out that Saturday's shooting in El Paso was the 249th mass shooting incident this year. That according to Gun Violence Archive. Now, the archive defines a mass shooting as 4 or more victims injured or killed, excluding the perpetrator in one location. Now, this definition is broad, writes KERA-TV, and includes some shootings that others may not, such as gang violence. By comparison, the FBI's definition of active shooter incident excludes drug or gang violence or the accidental discharge of guns. But you can get more information by logging on. So based on that calculation, with the shooting overnight in Dayton, Ohio, now at 250 mass shootings so far this year on this August the 4th. From WHIO-TV, the CBS affiliate in Dayton, Ohio, the very latest on what happened overnight.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Matt Carper, Assistant Chief of Police and Deputy Director, Dayton Police Department. Just after 1 o'clock this morning, we had an active shooter situation in the Oregon District, part of our downtown area in the 400 block of East 5th Street. We had one shooter that we are aware of and multiple victims. Right now, the shooter is deceased from gunshot wounds from the responding officers. We have 9 victims deceased in addition to that on East 5th Street, and we have approximately 16 more victims hospitalized right now in unknown conditions. Currently, we're working on identifying the suspect to see what the possible motivation might have been. We do not have that yet. Suspect was firing a long gun with multiple rounds at the victims.
That briefing early this morning, courtesy of WHIO-TV in Dayton, Ohio. And now on to the shooting in El Paso, Texas. And information courtesy of NBC News. Investigators reasonably confident that the Texas suspect left an anti-immigrant screed. Here are some of the details. Quote, investigators are examining a screed, which is a diatribe believed to have been posted online by the suspect in Saturday's fatal shooting at a Texas shopping mall an hour before the attack. That according to senior law enforcement officials. Investigators are reasonably confident that the suspect posted the diatribe on the extremist online forum 8chan before the shooting. Terrorism experts warn that nothing should be taken at face value in the propaganda material left behind by hate crime suspects, which aim to provide fodder for social media pickup and mainstream media coverage. The screed, posted to an anonymous extremist message board, railed against immigrants in Texas and pushed talking points about preserving European identity in America. The attack in El Paso leaving at least 20 dead, 26 injured in that incident. The document criticized both Democrats and Republicans and expressed anti-government and anti-corporate views. So your thoughts on all of this as we come to grips with 2 shootings within 13 hours. John, you're first up in Houston, Texas. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it was just a horrible mass shooting, and there needs to be some, these AR-15s and AK-47s, they need to be banned. I'm a hunter and all that stuff, and they serve no purpose other than to kill people. And it's just, this guy wanted to be caught, and I'm just furious about the whole thing. I think President Trump is partly to blame for his rhetoric and his, I just don't know what else to say. I mean, I just think he's partly to blame because he's stoking all this hate by these right-wing extremists.
John, thanks. We'll go next to Ronald, who's joining us from Burlington, Michigan. Good morning, Ron.
How you doing? My comment is just basically the age group of these shooters seem to be around 21 years old. Is that correct?
Well, we know the shooter in El Paso, Texas was 21. We haven't gotten confirmation on the shooter in Dayton, Ohio.
Well, the thing is kind of depressing that these young kids are, turning kind of like, against the Latinos when I've worked with some Latinos up here in Michigan in Marshall and Battle Creek, and they are the hardest working people I've ever worked with. They come up here and they work for next to nothing. They get exploited by the company owners, and they take a lot of beef. I worked an 18-hour job one time with one 15-minute break in the whole day. And the people I worked with were Latinos, and they didn't care about that. They just wanted to work. I was like, forget this. I walked off the job because I thought it's like slave labor. And these people are coming up here to try to earn a living, and I think we ought to give them a chance. That's my comment.
Thank you for the call. Bob is joining us from Logan, Utah. Bob, good morning. Your view on all of this?
Good morning. Well, my view is that they have a leader now. Trump's incited this whole thing. And for the last year, I could see this coming, and anybody with any common sense did. When you're backing guns and you're backing this and putting everybody down, these people are wanting to be a hero and show off for their friends and trying to please Mr. Trump. I don't think Trump actually told him to go do it, but we should have a leader intelligent enough to stop this total nonsense. And the rest of the world probably feels just like me. There's no news media in the world that cares for this man. But anyway, thank you for letting me call in.
Bob, thanks for the call. And the New York Post has a photograph of the suspect involved in the shooting allegedly at the Walmart in El Paso, Texas. He is 21 years old. He put the gun down. He is in police custody this morning, and these pictures from the Walmart security cams as he entered, and you can see the pictures online at NY Post. Republican Governor Greg Abbott issuing a statement on his Twitter page in response to the shootings that took place in his home state of Texas. More tweets this morning and more reaction, including this from Senator John Cornyn, who said, quote, "Our hearts go out to the families of those killed and injured in El Paso today. We stand with all El Pasoans in the face of the senseless violence and thank the brave people of the El Paso police and the first responders. I stand ready to help." That from Senator Cornyn. And Senator Cruz saying, "Heidi and I are praying for everyone in El Paso as events continue to unfold. Please heed any warnings from local authorities and law enforcement and stay safe." And more reaction from the mayor of El Paso, Texas. You can follow on his Twitter page. We'll go to Robert, who's joining us this morning from Fayetteville, Pennsylvania. Good morning.
Hello, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with Donald Trump. I've never heard him tell people to go out and buy guns. This has nothing to do with too many AKs or AR-15s. This is all brought on by forgetting to secure our border down south. The Democrats have been letting people in for the last 10 years. It's like a revolving door down there, and we've reached a breaking point. And there's people across this country that are frustrated. They don't know what to do, and unfortunately, some of them chose to do this.
Well, Robert,
But,
let me ask you about the situation in Ohio, which again is still unfolding. But how does that relate to the border?
Well, I bet you that person had motives. I don't know if the area.
We don't know that, though, so we've got to be careful. We don't know what motivated him.
If there was a lot of illegal or undocumented people in that area or not, but I could bet that the one down in Texas had that behind his motives. And like I said, I'm a Democrat that voted for Donald Trump, and I'll vote for him again. I'm pro Second Amendment, and I will never let anybody enter my house to confiscate my weapons. There'll be a civil war worse than the one 150 years ago if that ever happens.
Well, Robert, as a gun owner and as a supporter of the president, what about these magazines that turn guns into basically assault rifles? Should they be in any way restricted or taken off the market?
Well, a lot of the rifles were designed with anything with a magazine. Usually a company comes around and builds a bigger one. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the company that produced the rifle, but there's aftermarket, enlarged capacity magazines on the market for just about every gun. The only exception would be some of the guns that Ruger made. They were pretty hard to find extended magazines for. But I don't think that makes a difference. There are a lot of people who have carry permits in this country, and I believe in Dayton, one guy actually reached in and grabbed the rifle away from the shooter, and the shooter had to abandon the rifle and go to a backup handgun. That's what we need more people who are brave enough to do that. People who have carry permits. In those areas where they were at, the carry permits were discouraged. People were discouraged to take a gun in that area. They're declared gun-free zones by the owners of the clubs and such. So a lot of people don't carry their weapons even if they have a carry permit when they go into a situation like that. So,
Robert, thanks for the call from Fayetteville, Pennsylvania, and another tweet from the president who said, "Melania and I send our heartfelt thoughts and prayers to the great people of Texas." And this is the headline from the Dayton Daily News. If you're just waking up, yet another mass shooting early this morning. A confirmation of 9 dead, 16 wounded or injured in an area known as the Oregon District, which is a popular spot for bars and nightclubs, and many people out just simply having a good time when the shooting took place. And yesterday, the El Paso Times putting together this compilation of what the scene was like in El Paso, Texas, at the mall and the adjoining Walmart, as well as government officials, the governor of Texas, and police authorities explaining exactly what happened.
Active shooter call went out this morning to 911 at 10:39 a.m. Police response, first officer on the scene, was 10:45 a.m., a 6-minute response time. From this shooter, we have 20 confirmed fatalities, and we have 26 wounded. The ages and genders of all these people injured and killed are numerous in the age groups. The situation, needless to say, is a horrific one.
This is a tough time for El Paso, something none of us would have ever imagined. My condolences and prayers go out to all of El Paso as we mourn those who have been impacted by this tragedy. Adair and I, with the rest of El Paso, will pray for and mourn those who we have lost. We will remember their lives and honor their memories together. Our community will not be defined by this senseless, evil act of violence. We will be defined by the unity and compassion we showed in the wake of this tragedy.
Texas grieves for the people of El Paso today. On a day that would have been a normal day for someone to leisurely go shopping, turned into one of the most deadly days in the history of Texas. Lives were taken who should still be with us today. 20 innocent people from El Paso have lost their lives, and more than 24 more are injured. We, as a state, unite in support of these victims and their family members. For every mom and dad, for every son and daughter, we ask that you put your arms around your family members tonight and give them a hug and let them know how much you love them.
That from Governor Greg Abbott and other first responders, courtesy of the El Paso Times, to give you a sense of how that story was playing out. Again, 2 mass shootings within 13 hours. A tweet from Jody saying El Paso was invaded by hate from outside the city. Now my peaceful hometown is thrown upside down from an invader from Dallas who shot up my hometown. An official response from Senate leaders, beginning with Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, who says on Twitter the entire nation is horrified by today's senseless violence in El Paso. Elaine and my prayers go out to the victims of the terrible violence, their families and friends, and the brave first responders who charged into harm's way. And from Senator Chuck Schumer, the situation in El Paso is heartbreaking. We are so grateful to the first responders on the scene. I am praying for the victims, the survivors, and their families. We must act to help end gun violence in America. And this from Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a statement on the shooting in El Paso. She said the following, quote, "Today's horrific mass shooting in El Paso breaks the hearts of all Americans. We are grateful for the courage and the heroism of our brave first responders who kept people safe and cared for those in need, and whose swift action brought the suspects into custody and prevented further harm. Too many families," writes Speaker Pelosi, "in too many communities have been forced to endure the daily horror of gun violence. Enough is enough. The Republican Senate's continued inaction dishonors our solemn duty to protect innocent men, women, and children and end this epidemic once and for all. We will continue to insist on common sense steps to keep our families and our community safe. May it be a comfort to those grieving the loss of their loved ones that so many Americans mourn with, and pray for them at this difficult time." Your thoughts on all of this. Tricia joining us from Warsaw, Indiana. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. My comment is I am calling on every single senator and every single congressman to come forward as one body and condemn these radical ideals that were, I believe, behind this horrific act in Texas. Unless they stand up and say enough is enough, we will no longer tolerate these radical groups, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, etc., and their hateful rhetoric and their stirring up the people to acts of violence. They are derelict in their duty. Also, the NRA needs to come forward and speak out against these public assassinations of people just trying to enjoy their freedoms. I'm very upset by this.
Well, thank you for the call. And I just want to point out that as of shortly before 7 a.m. this morning when we went on the air, I did go to the NRA website, and there was no official statement on either the shooting that took place yesterday in El Paso or certainly what happened overnight in Dayton, Ohio. This is a tweet from Mark Stone. "It won't take long for the politicians to take advantage of the situation and propose some meaningless gun control like expanding background checks. Both parties are afraid of the NRA and losing votes." But on the Heritage website at heritage.org, there's this headline: "Broad gun control restrictions are not the answer." Most commonly proposed gun control measures are already ineffective at preventing mass public shootings in states where they are currently implemented, writes the Heritage organization. Strict gun control may be the go-to response of many, but it's simply not the answer to the problem of mass public shootings. Instead, we must focus more intently on the major underlying causes of the gun violence: untreated mental health problems, gang and drug activity that drive illegal black market firearm transfers, and the lack of economic opportunities that lead to the cycles of poverty and crime. More details at heritage.org. Trish is joining us out west in Seattle, Washington. Good morning.
Good morning. I can't believe this. I woke up in the middle of the night checked on CNN, another shooting. Really, my God, what is this country coming to? And for the politicians, the usual song and dance, but nobody's got the courage to do something effectively. Let's look at what other countries in the world do that don't have this problem. Why can't we emulate some of their reasonable gun safety laws? I'm not saying taking your guns away, but we got rid of the bump stocks. That's a start. But who needs an AK-47? If you want one of those, that's for target practice. Keep it at the range. You don't have them flying around out here. And my final point is Donald Trump is fomenting hate in this country, and I put this on his doorstep. He's a vile, ugly human being. Thanks.
This is from Steve saying the caller who said that the assault-style weapon shootings have nothing to do with Donald J. Trump or the NRA says it is the crisis at the border that is the cause. Says what we need is more people attacking mass shooters with their bare hands. Tom is joining us from Hardeeville, South Carolina. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, these mass shootings have almost become commonplace. And you know, as you read earlier, the politicians with their boilerplate statements and their, well, our hearts go out to the victims. It doesn't mean anything. And if we're looking to place blame, which a lot of the callers are looking to place blame, let's look in the mirror. Our society has become such where we're becoming dysfunctional, if we're not dysfunctional already. Our government is dysfunctional from the top to the bottom. From the school boards all the way up to Washington. We don't get anything done. People are frustrated. They don't know what to do next. We don't talk to each other anymore. We all go to our nice little silos on the internet or on media, and we only listen to, well, Trump's a bad guy, or the Democrats are socialists or communists. We don't talk to each other. Congress is going to come up with some half-baked idea, that thinks one law, whether it be gun control or something else, is going to stop all of this.
Tom, thanks for the call from South Carolina. And according to reports in Dayton, Ohio, the suspect who was killed in the shooting that took place overnight, making him the 10th person to die, 9 victims and the shooter, apparently had a .223 high-powered revolver that was used in the shooting. Again, details still coming in as the city of Dayton, Ohio comes to grips with the mass shooting that took place around 1 o'clock this morning. Want to share with you this website, and we'll look at it for just a moment. Give you a sense of the number of mass shootings that have been taking place in the United States in recent years. It's available online at WSJ.com. For our radio audience, we'll pause for just a moment so you can look at this, understand the magnitude of the mass shootings that have happened in the U.S., and our question is, what can be done to prevent it? Again, that from the Wall Street Journal website, available online at WSJ.com. Mavis is joining us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. As we look at these statistics, your reaction to all of this? Mavis, you with us?
Hello.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm calling from Florida, and I would like to say, this is just becoming crazy now. Every day, basically, somebody's shooting up innocent people. And thinking about our wonderful president who's spewing all of this hate in the country, and these white supremacists who listen to him. It's just sad. We need our president to do better.
Mavis, thanks for the call. The mayor of Dayton, Ohio, with this tweet: I'm heartbroken. Thank you for our first responders and all that you've done. We will share updates as we have more information. Next is Jerry joining us from Illinois, Mount Vernon, Illinois. Good morning. What, if anything, can be done about this, Jerry?
I I am all for the Second Amendment, people hunting and stuff. But this has got to stop. They've got to do something, like putting a duct tape on Trump's mouth, for one thing.
Connie, you are next, joining us from Highland, California. Good morning. And you had a mass shooting out there just last weekend at the Garlic Food Festival in Northern California.
Yes, we did. You know, people are saying, oh, blaming Trump, blaming Trump. I mean, all this started when he got elected. But, you know, the Democrats would go and, like, Maxine Waters, go, if you see somebody like a Republican or whatever in a restaurant or something, you know, go shoo him out or something. And like when they saw Cruz, they went to the restaurant, and they're just spreading all this hatred instead of coming together and getting down and talking to each other. That's nothing but hatred that they're spreading. That is so pathetic.
Connie, thank you for the call. Teresa joining us from Redding, California. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Certainly.
To the last caller, it's really an American people problem, and the two heads of that are Trump and Stephen Miller. What I first called to say is that 2.5 years ago, my husband and I started a serious conversation about leaving and moving to Costa Rica. Keep in mind, my husband is a Vietnam veteran. So many people said to us, oh, my gosh, that's scary. Is it safe there? Are you kidding me? We would be safer in Costa Rica than we would be in America, the land that my husband fought for, than anything. I mean, come on. It's not safe in America anymore. We're not safe in our schools, our workplaces, malls, festivals. It's just got to stop. And it's Donald Trump and his racist rhetoric that is putting this into the minds of crazy men. The NRA hands them the weapons. That's all I have to say.
Teresa, thanks for the call. Beto O'Rourke made a number of comments yesterday, emotional, at an AFSCME event in Las Vegas, Nevada. By the way, we have that on our website at cspan.org. And later, courtesy of CNN, when the former congressman who represented El Paso, Texas for 3 terms commented on the shooting in his hometown and placing blame in part on President Trump. Here's what he said.
We've had a rise in hate crimes every single one of the last 3 years. During an administration where you have a president who's called Mexicans rapists and criminals, though Mexican immigrants commit crimes at a far lower rate than those born here in the country, he has tried to make us afraid of them to some real effect and consequence. Attempting to ban all Muslims from this country. The day that he signed that executive order, the mosque in Victoria, Texas was burned to the ground. Those chants that we heard in Greenville, North Carolina, send her back, talking about our fellow American citizens duly elected to represent their constituents in the Congress who happen to be women of color. He is a racist, and he stokes racism in this country, and it does not just offend our sensibilities, it fundamentally changes the character of this country, and it leads to violence. And again, there are still details that we are waiting on, but I'm just following the lead that I've heard from the El Paso Police Department, where they say there are strong indications that this shooter wrote that manifesto and that this was inspired by his hatred of people here in this community.
That from Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, who represented El Paso, Texas. Also, Democrats who are tweeting Joe Biden with this: heartbroken to hear the news from El Paso. Our thoughts are with those impacted by yet another senseless act of gun violence in America. How many lives must be cut short? How many communities must be torn apart? It's past time we take action and end our gun violence epidemic. And from Senator Bernie Sanders, everyone in America, myself included, is devastated by the news of this latest attack in El Paso. Sadly, after each of these tragedies, the Senate does nothing. That has got to change. From Utica, Michigan, Sue, good morning.
Good morning. I have a couple of comments. One is about what you were talking about, the Heritage Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're talking about, well, maybe mental health, you know, we need to do more, you know, a couple other things. Well, they want to cut those kind of things. And I don't see where there's going to be any change, even with this, because until Congress or people in our government have a personal involvement, they know somebody or it involves them, I can't see where they're going to change anything. You know, even with Sandy Hook, you would think something would be done. You know, there's multiple answers to this, and nobody wants to do it. And because it's going to affect the politics on the right and on the left, they kind of go overboard on the other side. Until it involves somebody in Congress where they have a personal attachment to it, I don't see where anything's going to get done.
Thank you for the call. We'll go to Ed joining us from Anaheim, California. Good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Good morning, sir. Well, try to answer your question about what can be done. Well, we first have to recognize that you can't apply the same gun rules for the hills of Wyoming to Hell's Kitchen in New York. One possible thought is that require everybody that wants to own a gun, first off, to get a gun check done by get it done by the local sheriff's department and pay for the background check. But the second more important thing is require all gun owners to get gun insurance. Bring in the private sector. So if they can pass the sheriff's department background check and the insurance company, then they have permission to own a gun. We do not have the right to own a gun. That's not what the Second Amendment says. The Second Amendment says well-regulated, i.e. the police have the right to bear arms, not we, the citizen. And my last point is, I'm tired of people calling President Trump, a racist. Nobody was more blatantly racist than Bozo Obama. Thank you.
Ed from California, and Richard has this: GOP, the cowards that take the NRA blood money. And Nicholas Kristof has reprinted a piece that he wrote back in 2017. He did so yesterday in light of the shooting in El Paso, Texas, and before what happened in Dayton, Ohio, how to reduce shootings. It's available online at nytimes.com, and he writes the following. The United States has more than 300 million guns, roughly one for every citizen, and stands out as well for its gun death rates. At the other extreme, Japan has less than one gun per 100 people and typically fewer than 10 gun deaths a year in the entire country. Gun enthusiasts often protest cars kill about as many people as guns, and we don't ban them. No, writes Nicholas Kristof, but automobiles are actually a model for the public health approach. I'm suggesting we don't ban cars, but we work hard to regulate them and limit access to them so as to reduce the death toll that they cause. That's a perspective from Nicholas Kristof, available online, How to Reduce Shootings, at nytimes.com. Ray is joining us from Rockwood, Tennessee. Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to know the statistics last night of how many gangbangers killed each other in our large cities compared to what happened yesterday and this morning. I would say there was more young black men killed in all these Democratic-run cities than were killed in these gang-related killings. Were killed more than what I've seen on TV yesterday and this morning.
And your point, Ray, is what?
Let's talk about the Crips and the Bloods and the MS-13. How many did they kill last night?
But what about I understand your point, but what about what happened in El Paso and Dayton? Regardless of what happens in their cities, what do you do about it?
What's the difference? If you're dead, you're dead, whether it's young black men or anybody in these malls. And
Ray, you still with us?
The Bloods or no one.
But I don't quite understand your point.
Well, what do you don't understand? They killed more in these large cities last night, and I don't hear that on TV or C-SPAN, or no one's talking about all the killings being done in these large cities, all these young blacks killing blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the gun control in the large cities? Are they all registered guns?
We'll go to Priscilla in West Hills, California. Good morning, Priscilla.
Oh, good morning. I'd just like to say, number one, my heart is breaking for all that's going on in this world today. And my problem is I'm brokenhearted because people are calling in there and blaming our president for this. This has nothing to do with President Trump. And it was happening before he ever became president. And I just like to tell them, congressmen are writing in saying, people are in our prayers. Everybody's talking about prayers at this point, but they take prayers out of the schools. These kids are coming up in school with nothing, with no hope. They know nothing about God, and their hearts are becoming evil. Not just kids, I mean everybody. It's the evil hearts that's doing this. And people need to turn back to God. They want God out of everything, out of the schools. They have nothing. When you have no fear of God, you've just become, evil can take over. And that's what's happening right now. And they need to wake up. If it's not a gun that's doing it, it's going to be something else. A knife. They got machetes. These MS-13 gang members are chopping people up with machetes. So it's not, don't blame one person. The person that did it is the one to blame, but it's their hearts that need to be changed. We need to put God back in the schools. Let kids learn something more about life and about loving people rather than hating people and because of their skin color. Nobody's fault because they were born a certain color, but we're all bleed the same color blood, and we're all created by God.
Priscilla from West Hills, California, thanks for the call. It is the bottom of the hour. If you're listening on C-SPAN Radio, which is carried live every Sunday morning on Sirius XM, POTUS Channel 124, as well as C-SPAN Radio, which is 90.1 FM in the greater D.C. area, we are talking about the shootings, two of them, two mass shootings. The first that took place, we got word late yesterday morning, early yesterday afternoon in El Paso, Texas, with a confirmation of 29 people dead in that shooting and in a shooting in Dayton, Ohio overnight. So 20 in Texas, 9 in Ohio, dozens more injured. The shooting that took place in Dayton, Ohio at a popular area known as the Oregon District, where there are bars and nightclubs. And we're getting reaction from the presidential candidates as well, including Senator Cory Booker saying enough. We need to end this national nightmare, praying for everyone affected by this unspeakable tragedy and for our country to find the moral courage to take action to end this carnage. That from Senator Booker. And Senator Warren, the news out of El Paso is devastating. I'm heartbroken for the victims and their families. Far too many communities have suffered through tragedies like this already. We must act now to end our country's gun violence epidemic. That from Senator Warner, and from Pete Buttigieg also issuing a statement of condolences to those who were impacted by the shooting that took place in El Paso yesterday. Roy is joining us from Woodstock, Georgia. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, just to support the previous call, through the founding father of the Constitution, we consider ourselves to be a Christian nation. Back in 2000, President Obama said we're no longer just a Christian nation, but also a nation of Jews, Muslim, Buddhists, Hindu, and non-believers. Now, in an effort to appease those that did not share our Christian value, we started eliminating the name of God from the public domain. Many within this generation are no longer seeking a Prince of Peace, but trying to sin in peace. God and prayer has been expelled from public school, censored from public television, and banned from public gathering. Therefore, this generation has little knowledge of God and what God has done for the United States. They seek to do what is right in their own eyes. They have little respect for God, country, authority, and life. We must return to our Judeo-Christian values and allow prayer and public display of God's love for all people. Conservatives, liberal, medias, and politicians must seek to recognize and conserve our Christian values.
Roy, thanks for the call. From Mayor Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, America is under attack from homegrown white nationalist terrorism. That ideology is evil. It is being condoned at the highest levels of our government. And today it inspired a gunman to claim at least 20 lives. Enough is enough. We have an obligation to act. That from Pete Buttigieg, one of the Democratic presidential candidates. This past Tuesday, we sat down with President Trump in the Roosevelt Room at the White House. And one of my questions, the darkest day in his presidency, he talked about gun violence in America. Let's watch.
You have a school shooting. It's tremendously, it angers me, actually. It really angers me. It frustrates everybody. You say, how could a thing like this happen? How is it possible? When you see innocent children being killed, teachers, that's something that you just never can really get over. And you say, is there something we can do? What can we do? What can, because there's so many different sides to it.
What can we do?
Well, you can do a lot of the things that we've done. We did a report. The Florida shooting was horrible. And for some reason, that group of people, they're terrific. I got to be friendly with a lot of them. And we did a report, and they really appreciated the report. We did it with them and with experts. And I'm going to give you a copy of it because I'd like to actually have another meeting. I think it was really comprehensive, really good. And, there were a lot of red flags with that shooter. I think they said there were 36 red flags. And you're pretty disappointed. You know what I mean by a red flag. In other words, there were warnings out there. This was not a Boy Scout. And people didn't do what they should have done. And now there are other cases where there are no warnings whatsoever. It comes out of the blue. Maybe in certain ways that's almost more frustrating because you'd say, how could a thing like this happen? So those are events that really are, they're very tough to take when you're the president of a country.
That from the president this past Tuesday, the full interview airing at 10 a.m. Eastern Time following the Washington Journal in place of newsmakers here on C-SPAN and also on C-SPAN Radio. This is from Mimi responding to that Tennessee caller earlier. The so what to the mass killings? More died at the hands of gang members. So what's a few deaths at the mall, festival, church, movie theaters, etc.? Calling him, quote, what a hillbilly. Anthony from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Good morning.
Good morning. My condolences to all those people that have passed, their families. But the two previous callers I totally agree with. And that is on literally the surface. On the very top itself is the fact that we have moved away from a lawful America. In other words, there are people right here, stateside, that really believes and know that, wait a minute, people are just coming in and there's no rule of law. And every single thing that Donald Trump does, the courts are against him. It does not work that way. Either we have a lawful course of life, otherwise we're going to go straight down the drain. It's very unfortunate, it really is, because we can come back to where we are by the grace of God. But I stress that by God's grace, because otherwise we are on a very, very destructive path. The two callers previous to me were very right. We need to get back to where God is. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. Josh from Norwich, Connecticut. Good morning.
Hi. Yeah, you got 4 callers in a row that all agree. It's amazing. All the people that believe that God's missing, I agree with. And I would liken America to the Tower of Babel, the story of the Tower of Babel in the Bible. All these peoples from all countries don't share anything in common, speak different languages. They come together, they have problems. I mean, this has been recorded. I mean, people have known this since before Jesus. So it amazes me that people don't understand it, don't get it. And
Josh, thank you. And this is from Juanita saying that thoughts and prayers is a respectful condolence. Ask President Trump for a realistic solution. Once again, thoughts and prayers, respectful condolences for strangers to offer survivors. Representative Escobar represents El Paso, Texas, and she released a statement yesterday. Was actually holding a town hall meeting not far from where the shooting took place yesterday morning at that Walmart in El Paso. Today, she writes, El Paso is facing the indescribable pain and the horror of too many American communities that have had to endure. Our hearts are completely broken by this needless loss of life, especially here in our beautiful home. We mourn for the victims and everyone involved. She goes on to say that we are grateful for the courage of our first responders, law enforcement, and El Pasans who help one another in this very difficult hours and days ahead. Our community will provide the strength and comfort that the survivors and their families need. And to all of us who have the power to end this horror, I am imploring that we come together and once again address the gun violence epidemic that plagues our nation. Jim is joining us from Yuma, Arizona. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, that's a real tragedy, all these deaths. And, yeah, I agree with that. They tried to blame Trump on a lot of it. Sandy Hook was real bad, and Trump wasn't in office. But anyway, yeah, we don't need these assault rifles, so-called assault rifles, but a lot of these are not automatic. They're semi-automatic. And it took 6 minutes for the police to respond. I was a correctional officer for several years, and I know how many rounds can be shot off in 6 minutes. So people need to be trained with weapons. They need to protect these places. Schools need it because 6 minutes, how many children could be killed? In 6 minutes, how many more people can be killed in other places? They need people with weapons, know how to use them. I've never had to shoot anybody with my guns. I have a lot of guns, and I hope I never will have to, but I do believe in protection. But this is a big tragedy, and my heart goes out to all these people.
Jim, thanks, from Yuma, Arizona. I want to bring to your attention what the president said during his State of the Union address earlier this year. It's available on our website in the video library. El Paso used to have extremely high rates of violent crime, one of the highest in the entire country, and considered one of our nation's most dangerous cities. And now, immediately upon its building with a powerful barrier in place, El Paso is one of the safest in our country. It's available on our website. Here's part of what the president said.
Security wall was put in place. This powerful barrier almost completely ended illegal crossings. The border city of El Paso, Texas, used to have extremely high rates of violent crime, one of the highest in the entire country, and considered one of our nation's most dangerous cities. Now, immediately upon its building, with a powerful barrier in place, El Paso is one of the safest cities in our country.
That from the president in his State of the Union speech. Mark is joining us from Grand Prairie, Texas. Good morning.
Good morning. I just had plenty to say about the bump stocks and the assault rifles are outlandish. They should not exist. Any long clips that go onto a rifle of that caliber, any assault rifle that has fast firing by single finger triggering mechanism to eliminate. But there is something to take into consideration of the people like the shipyard shooter, Aaron Alexis and Myron May, had voices that were being beamed to them, and satellite technology has the capability of doing this to people.
This is from the Washington Post. Walmart's site of recent shootings has a complicated history with guns. And here are some of the details from the Washington Post. The recent gun violence in or near the Walmart stores in El Paso on Saturday and in Mississippi days before has drawn attention to the company's complicated history with gun sales. Firearms have long made up a key part of Walmart's business. In addition to being the world's largest retailer, Walmart is often referred to as the world's largest gun retailer. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, was big on guns, an avid hunter. He opened his flagship store in Bentonville, Arkansas specifically so he could be close to his in-laws' quail hunting ranch. Remington shotguns were his favorite, as Field & Stream once noted. He was such a devout fan that the gunmaker issued a commemorative model in his name after he died. But Walmart's relationship with firearm sales has been fickle in the 26 years since it's made its landmark decision to stop carrying handguns. As economic and political winds have shifted, so have Walmart's gun policies, though the general trend has been toward more restrictions. That from the Washington Post. More details online and in today's newspaper. Sankofa is joining us from Marietta, Georgia. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, John. The way that I see this is that we are more concentrated on the weapons used. If I have two guns, if I put my guns on my table, it's not going to do anything. It is the person behind it. I mean, you can have a person use a vehicle to mow down people, to kill people. There are shootings going on every day, but we get upset. There could be 30 shootings within a week, but we get so upset when it's 20 people getting killed in one day. To me, a one person death is too much. The problem with us is that America has always had guns. What has happened is our value system has changed. We have a value system of death. We don't have a problem with killing newborn babies in the womb. We don't have any problem with that. But it's the problem is us. It's our value system, is that we don't, as a country, as a people, care anymore. Because this wasn't going on in the 50s, in the 60s, and people still had guns. We have to check our own value system. Parents need to be more caring of their children. They need to be more engaged in their children. We all going to work, the parent, the father, and the mother. Ain't nobody in the house. The children are raising themselves. So our whole value system is just all messed up.
Sankofa from Marietta, Georgia, and Tulsi Gabbard, Democratic representative from Hawaii and a candidate for the 2020 Democratic nomination, with this tweet: sending all of our love and strength to the people of El Paso during this terrible tragedy. Thank you to the brave first responders putting their lives on the line to prevent more being killed. We can and must come together to prevent these senseless shootings. That from Tulsi Gabbard. And Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, again and again and again and again and again, and nothing in response. This is domestic terrorism going unchecked, and it's complete madness. My heart is with El Paso and the victims and their families. And from Julian Castro, my heart is with the people of El Paso today as they cope with a devastating mass shooting, the scope of which we are still learning. The attack is a tragic reminder of our government's failure to do its most basic duty to protect American lives. We need gun reform now. One of the employees at the Walmart speaking to reporters afterwards, and this from the El Paso Times website, she chronicled what she saw, what she heard, and what happened.
All I hear is just gunshots, just loud pops. At first it was far away, meaning that they were outside, and then they just started getting closer and closer. And that's when I see everybody just starts running like crazy. So then that's when I heard even louder gunshots. So I just started, first thing was just to get everybody running out. And I see a little girl. First thing was just to grab her and take her outside. We just ran through our back doors. After that, they pushed us to the mall, and that's when we heard more gunshots at Dillard's, actually. And then from there, we were pushed on to Cinemark. That's where everything was more calm and more safe.
And then, did you see any gunmen? Did you see any?
I didn't see any gunmen, nothing like that. All I did was I heard that it was two guys in black that was at Walmart, but that's all I heard. I just see people on the floor, but I didn't see no gunmen.
People on the floor with injuries, or
some
just hiding?
One looked like they just fell, as in they were just trembled, but I didn't see no blood at that moment.
That from a Walmart employee chronicling what she saw. Again, 20 confirmed deaths and 26 injured in El Paso, Texas. And overnight in Dayton, Ohio, 9 confirmed deaths and 16 others injured in a separate mass shooting that took place early this morning at approximately 1 a.m. in a popular bar and restaurant district known as the Oregon District in Dayton, Ohio. And from the New York Times, some of the pictures outside that El Paso shooting. More of your phone calls and your reaction. Barbara from Crockett, Texas. Good morning.
Well, good morning. This is a terrible incident, but a lot of people are missing the point. This all started off of websites. And we got 24/7 news coverage on all of this stuff. And I blame the internet, because a lot of people get all these radical ideas from the dark web, and everybody says, well, we need gun control. What about internet control? All this stuff is popped up. You put all this crazy stuff in kids' minds, and then we do have a society that has totally gotten away from we don't care about human life anymore. And all this rhetoric coming from all of these politicians, and it's on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, but all I hear out of Democrats is hate and everything. But the main cause of this is they get on these dark websites, they get indoctrinated, and both of these incidences in Ohio and Texas, these guys were in military gear, they had headphones, and this all comes from the dark web. Why don't we try to control the dark web, where all this is instigated at?
Barbara from Texas, and the front page of today's Washington Post. Again, the chaotic scene in El Paso, Texas, 20 confirmed deaths, and the gunman is in police custody. Henry is joining us from New York City. Good morning. Welcome to the conversation. How do you stop all of this?
Well, I called in this morning. I'm sick to my stomach and my soul. And the first thing I hear is people talking about God and Christian values. And I want to remind people that not long ago, we heard all about Islamic terrorism and Muslim terrorism. And I just want to point out the sad fact that most of these killings are by Christians. Christian terrorism, but we don't want to say it. There are so many good Christians, but nevertheless, just as there are so many good Muslims, but we were gaily speaking about Muslim terrorism, yet we seem to be reluctant to call what we see in front of us Christian terrorism.
Henry, thank you. And Brittany, people are dying from hate. You can send us a tweet at C-SPAN WJ. Gun Violence Archives, keeping track of gun violence, mass shootings, gang-related, as well as what happened over the weekend in Ohio and in Texas, marking so far this year 250 mass shootings classified as the deaths of 4 or more people. 250 so far this year. Don from Henderson, Nevada, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Steve. I want to compliment you. I watched your interview with Trump, and there was no bitterness, no hatred, no insinuations, and that is a typical journalistic interview. You epitomize journalism. Now, case in point, this morning I turned on the television to watch the news, and I heard words that disturbed the hell out of me. Not only CNN, but a lot of your mass media. The CNN reporter that was following Trump in New Jersey, his name is Boris, and the other man automatically blamed Trump. Now, the media is the problem. Everybody that doesn't agree with the left is a racist. That word is history. It has no meaning whatsoever. The leader of the Democratic Party this morning that you showed, Pelosi, blamed the Republicans. That's the problem with our country. These demented people play the blame game.
So, Don, to that point, how do we get beyond D's and R's, Trump or anti-Trump, and find some solutions? Because you're right, we've had mass shootings with Presidents Obama and George W. Bush, and we've had a lot, obviously, with Donald Trump. So how do we get beyond the rhetoric and solve the problem?
Steve, we can't control demented minds on the right or the left. The extremists cannot be stopped. Gun control will not stop it. When you restrict gun control, the criminals will have all the guns, as we see in Baltimore and Chicago. The mind cannot be controlled. That's the real problem. How these people are brought up, how they're raised, how their parents raise them, that's the issue, Steve. And once again, I want to compliment you. I wish there were more journalists that were like you and would be neutral. That is totally gone in this country.
Don, thanks for the call. The interview, by the way, in case you're interested, will re-air at 10 o'clock Eastern Time on C-SPAN. A couple of tweets from Senator Kamala Harris in California, Democratic candidate, saying we shouldn't have to live in fear of mass shootings. Congress must have the courage to pass reasonable gun safety laws. If they won't act, I will. That from Senator Kamala Harris. And last week in Gilroy, today in El Paso, how can our country tolerate this? My prayers are yet again with families who are grieving, and my thanks to all those first responders that were able to act but not fast enough. We must act. That from Senator Kamala Harris, one of the candidates running for president. Quick note, by the way, the candidates will be in Iowa this weekend, starting on Thursday for the Iowa State Fair. We'll have live coverage and our full schedule available on our website at cspan.org. Vicki from Twin Falls, Idaho, you get the last word in this segment. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, I think what everybody seems to be missing is that our country has signed international agreements that have changed the sovereignty and the structure of the United States. Now, I just read this morning that regional organizations, which I think NAFTA is, and if not NAFTA, then the Organization of American States, which is a regional organization under the UN system, is authorized to enforce actions necessary to maintain international peace and security. Mm-hmm. The definition of peace and security, of course, that would determine how decisions are made. But, I mean, it's pretty obvious since what we're dealing with is a border issue. And since the South American countries and Latin American countries, they're pushing their people up into the United States, it would seem to be that this is an inter-American problem that we're having, and people should be looking at these international agreements and what our Senate has done to us with these treaties, these international treaties.
Vicki from Idaho, thank you, and for all of your calls and your comments. Another chance to react to what happened overnight in Dayton, Ohio, and in El Paso, Texas yesterday in our final hour. But up next as we continue on this Sunday morning.
Washington Journal continues.
Good morning. If you're just waking up, another shooting that took place overnight in Dayton, Ohio with 9 confirmed deaths. The gunman has also been killed and 16 others confirmed wounded. And this is the headline from the New York Times. 20 are killed in a shooting in El Paso, Texas. So within the span of 13 hours, 29 people killed in 2 separate mass shootings. We want to get your reaction. What, if anything, can be done about it? How do you solve the problem? We'll go to Ernest first in Decatur, Georgia. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
All right. It's a blessed day. I'm trying to figure out how can we let President Trump perpetuate the vigor of violence with his speeches toward people of color. I'm a black male who's involved in the civil rights movement. I'm 69 years old. I've heard this type of rhetoric before, and during my time when I spent in segregation 21 years, this type of vigor was done with Jews and blacks and anybody who was along with black movement. Now, how can we let President Reagan, President Trump, deal with this and continue to perpetuate a violent statement? And with his fiduciary oath that he took as president, that fiduciary oath can also get you locked up. I was a member of the Savannah River Board. If I had done something in reference to the nuclear negotiation, then they would have put me in jail. So what do we do about the president and his vigor of violence?
Ernest from Decatur, Georgia, thank you. And the president with this tweet at 8:16 this morning. God bless the people of El Paso, Texas. God bless the people of Dayton, Ohio. And from the Ohio delegation, reaction from the 2 senators will begin with Republican Senator Rob Portman, who says, while we are still learning more about the details of the tragedy in Montgomery County, we are praying for the victims. I am talking to local leaders and law enforcement officials this morning. First and foremost, let's get all of the facts. And from Senator Sherrod Brown, our hearts break for the people of El Paso and families of those lost. We're grateful to the first responders. We're also angry that shooting after shooting politicians in Washington and Columbus refuse to pass sensible gun legislation. That from Senator Sherrod Brown. Back to your calls. Elise from San Diego, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Yes, good morning. I would like to make a comment. I'm hearing that some people are saying that it's the gun, it's the gun, and others saying it's the people. And I think we really need to look at it's a combination of both. However, we have a domestic, radicalized young people who's doing this, so they don't necessarily have a history of mental illness. So you really can't go look at every one of these people and citizens in U.S. trying to stop this. So really, I think that's sensible, really gun control. In fact, some of the country that doesn't allow to have a gun, they don't have this sort of problem. So the things that we can control is really gun. It's not people. I mean, there's people with a mental illness, radicalized. How are you going to find all these people, right? So I think that we really need to go after gun control. Thank you.
Congressman Mike Turner with this tweet, because what happened overnight was personal. My daughter and friend fled into the Oregon district and contacted me at 2 a.m. As they ran home, I followed their progress and prayed for them and our community. Thank you to the Dayton police for their bravery in stopping this evil. Paula is joining us next from Birmingham, Alabama. Good morning.
Good morning. I blame all that on the president, because every time he gets on with his face there, he talks about the Jews, the immigration people, and the black people, and the brown people. I blame everything on Trump, because he started that down in South Carolina about the white premises, and that continues now. You see all these shootings, against immigrants, black people, and all these other brown people and whoever else he blames. They said they criminals, they gangsters, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I was trying to get through to that C-SPAN comment line there, and I dialed for 2 hours and never got through there. But I don't know about these Republicans or conservatives blaming the Democrats. The Democrats were never against black people or immigrants. They're trying to help them, and Trump just shuts them down on that rally he's got there, with his base. I think it's a terrible thing to do, and I hope maybe one of these days those Republicans going to wake up and see what happened in this country. There's already 250 shootings going on since he's been, trying to get back be a president.
Okay, Paul, I think actually, according to Gun Violence America Archive, 250 mass shootings this year in 2019, and you can go onto the website, which is gunviolencearchive.org, where they break down where the shootings have been taking place. We'll listen to Mansa joining us from Columbia Heights, Maryland. Good morning.
Good morning. In your report, do it break down how many of the shootings were black op operations? Hello?
James from California, good morning to you.
Yes, hi. I'd like to say that maybe the best thing to do is get the NRA out of the politics and get the lobbyists of the gun control people. It's more the NRA has too much influence on, it doesn't matter if it's the Republicans or the Democrats. It's the NRA has too much influence on both parties. So what we need to do is just eliminate the NRA lobbyists and not allow them into Washington so they can flood each side of the senators with money with their backroom deals, because that's what they do.
But that would restrict freedom of speech, which is inherent in the Constitution as well.
How would that affect freedom of speech? I don't understand. If you're saying that
well, if you're restricting an organization from lobbying, that's restricting their freedom of speech.
Yeah, but the problem is you don't have to have an AR-15 to shoot a deer or protect your home. A regular shotgun will protect your home, and you could hunt any animal with the shotgun. You'd have to be pretty close to the animal to do the damage that you want to do with the shotgun. Like all these other guns are for cowards that can be like miles away and just shoot, keep shooting. You know.
Okay, we'll go to Al joining us from Griffith, Indiana. Good morning, Al.
Good morning. Yes, I think this is going to continue to go on, and I would recommend a 7 minutes investment in watching a documentary that's on YouTube. You can see it. It's called A Night at the Garden, and it's kind of a deja vu of what's going on now. It's from 1939, and it's only 7 minutes long, and it kind of will show what's happening right now in America in this Trump-Putin era with these authoritarian figures. I think part of what I would describe what's going on at this time is that this is almost like white male privilege is on trial, and it's failing miserably. You know, got these wealthy white elite people leading these poor white blue-collar workers and high school educated guys down this path of fascism. And as you can see by these shootings and on the internet, this volatile language, which Trump buys into and uses liberally every time he has a meeting. I really am disappointed in the Republican legislators. It's almost like it's an implosion. They see that the demographics are changing in this country, and they're using it to their best ability, along with Putin, and they're burning the country up from the inside.
Al, I'll leave it there. Thank you for the call. This is from Nicholas Kristof. He first wrote this in November of 2017, but reposted on the New York Times website overnight. How to reduce the shootings, and he makes the following points. The U.S. has more than 300 million guns, roughly one for every citizen, and stands out as well for its gun death rate. At the other extreme, Japan has less than one gun per 100 people, and typically fewer than 10 gun deaths a year in the entire country. Gun enthusiasts often protest cars kill about as many people as guns, and we don't ban them. No, says Nicholas Kristof, but automobiles are actually a model for the public health approach I'm suggesting. We don't ban cars, but we work hard to regulate them and limit access to them so as to reduce the death toll that they cause. George from London, Kentucky, you are next. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I've been watching this all morning. It's kind of interesting. The government lied to us back in the 60s that they could take our guns and they would protect us, and it's obvious they can't. And on another point is the Democrats keep talking about how they won 2018 because of health care. Actually, they won it because of all the propaganda with the media saying Donald Trump was going to be in jail. So that's just a couple points I wanted to make. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll go to Chris joining us from Stowe, Ohio. How far is that from Dayton?
Well, I'm just south of Cleveland and Lake Erie, and Dayton's quite a bit farther south.
Your reaction to what happened in your state and also in Texas over the weekend?
Oh, I didn't sleep at all. I'm so upset, and it's more upsetting when I listen to all these Trump apologists calling up with their brainwashing from Fox News and from Trump. But I wanted to really point out something that happened back in 2017. The second or third thing that Trump did legislatively, he rolled back an Obama-era regulation that blocked the severely mentally ill from buying guns. And then when it went to the House, it passed very quickly, and then on to the Senate, where people like Cornyn and Cruz, who are offering their thoughts and prayers today, voted for it and passed it through. And then Mick Mulvaney got on TV this morning and talked about how sick this guy was, who you know, both of these guys are, and I just wonder how Mulvaney, who voted to let these sick men have guns. I mean, actually, the severely mentally ill people who were actually getting Social Security because they were so mentally ill, and then he's calling these shooters who never even got adjudicated mentally ill. He's calling them sick. So, I mean, there are so many things that need to be done in our culture, but you would think that our lawmakers would want to do something about it, and anybody who wants to can check with, you know, get online and check Congress and see who's voting for these things.
Chris, thanks for the call from Ohio, and some of the scenes from El Paso, Texas yesterday, where there are 20 confirmed deaths and the suspect is in police custody. In total, 29 killed, both in the shootings in Texas and then also early this morning at a popular area known as the Oregon District in Dayton, Ohio. Jan has this tweet: "No one wants to take guns, just limit the ones that can be used in mass shootings." You can send us your tweet at C-SPAN WJ. The Heritage Foundation has this essay available online at heritage.org. Broad gun control restrictions are not the answer. Most commonly proposed gun control measures already are ineffective at preventing mass public shootings in states where they are currently implemented. Strict gun control may be the go-to response of many, but it's simply not the answer to the problem of mass public shootings. Instead, we must focus more intently on the major underlying causes of the gun violence: unrelated mental health problems, gang and drug activity that drive illegal black market firearm transfers, and the lack of economic opportunities that lead to cycles of poverty and of crime. Kevin is joining us from Michigan. Good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Certainly.
My first question, or actually my first statement, is for the Democrats out there, and to tell them that this is not a Trump thing. This has been going on during Obama, Trump, and all of them. So it's not really any one president's idea. I think there should be more guns for people to carry in these protected zones. Maybe if there would have been a person there who had a gun, they could have stopped the shooter before he got, you know, a few shots out. But instead, with all these gun-free zones, people have places they know that there ain't going to be no one there to shoot at them. But I still think that if we had more people carrying, we could probably eliminate this, because we can't eliminate all the guns in America. There's just too many. So either have more people with guns that can carry them to stop the bad people. I don't see anything, see any other way of going around it.
Kevin, thank you. And the New York Post has the photograph of the gunman who is now in custody in El Paso, Texas, as he entered the Walmart with his headphones and the gun ready to shoot. It's available online at nypost.com. Ed is next, Portland, Tennessee. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today? Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
For all the Republicans who have watched Fox News for 8 years, hearing how Obama couldn't do anything right, now Trump doesn't do anything wrong. Just look at the tweet that he did today. I was waiting all day yesterday to find the tweet that he had in relation to the shooting. And today's tweet that he put out, today's shooting in El Paso, you'll see it's marked today's date. He can make any mistake he wants, and that's okay. In regards to the Republicans, I don't understand the Christian aspect. There's 10 commandments. Do not commit adultery, covet thy neighbor's wife, which he did with Macron. Thou shalt not kill. When he first got into office, he had a bombing that 4 service people died, so that's okay.
Let me go back, because I have the tweet that he wrote at 12:19 this morning. Today's shooting in El Paso, Texas, was not only tragic, it was an act of cowardice. I know that I stand with everyone in this country to condemn today's hateful act. There are no reasons or excuses that will ever justify killing innocent people. And so your point is what?
The shooting was yesterday, right? The 3rd?
Right. Well, yeah.
And if you look at the tweet, it's the 4th, right?
Right.
So he didn't send out a tweet all day yesterday.
No, he did.
He tweets about everything.
No, he did send out a tweet yesterday, too. We can pull that up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, he did. He actually sent out a number of tweets, including this one, if I can pull it up here for just a moment. Why don't I do that, and we'll hear from Ed in Portland. Actually, we'll hear from Tom next. Good morning, Tom. Yeah, here's a tweet that came at 4:57 yesterday. God be with you all. The president pledges full support for El Paso shooting. The victims, as lawmakers, also grieve. And then this morning, he sent condolences to those in Dayton, Ohio. Go ahead, Tom.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm calling in response to a previous caller. She blamed everything on President Trump. And this type of behavior didn't come about overnight. So therefore, you can't blame President Trump.
So who do you blame, or how do you solve the problem?
I don't have a solution.
Daniel in Melissa, Texas, you're next. Good morning.
God bless. Good morning. Well, here I am. I'm a neighboring citizen, I would guess, Collin County, Plano, born and raised native. Plano has seen a lot of interesting beauties right now, this community. We are one of the cleanest, most richest communities. We pay our taxes. We have great citizens. We have great honor. I was in the Collin County Courthouse, and I was looking at all the veterans that died from coming from Collin County. The bloodshed has to stop. We're in a spiritual crisis, if anything else. You want to fix this? You fix this one step at a time. You fix this one community at a time. You fix this one heart at a time. I feel like this is the moment for me to say this. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
We'll go to Charles next in Woodbridge, Illinois. Good morning. Charles, you with us? This is from the president, who said, God bless the people of El Paso, Texas, and God bless the people of Dayton, Ohio. During our interview with the president last Tuesday, we asked him about the most difficult day in his presidency, and he mentioned school shootings.
When you have a school shooting, it's tremendously, it angers me, actually. It really angers me. It frustrates everybody. You say, how could a thing like this happen? How is it possible? When you see innocent children being killed, teachers, that's something that you just never can really get over. And you say, is there something we can do? What can we do? What can, because there's so many different sides to it.
What can we do?
Well, you can do a lot of the things that we've done. We did a report. The Florida shooting was horrible. And for some reason, that group of people, they're terrific. I got to be friendly with a lot of them. And we did a report, and they really appreciated the report. We did it with them and with experts. And I'm going to give you a copy of it because I'd like to actually have another meeting. I think it was really comprehensive, really good. And, there were a lot of red flags with that shooter. I think they said there were 36 red flags. And you're pretty disappointed. You know what I mean by a red flag. In other words, there were warnings out there. This was not a Boy Scout. And people didn't do what they should have done. And now there are other cases where there are no warnings whatsoever. It comes out of the blue. Maybe in certain ways that's almost more frustrating because you'd say, how could a thing like this happen? So those are events that really are, they're very tough to take when you're the president of a country.
That from the president. The full interview airing at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. This is the headline from the New York Times. 20 are killed in the El Paso shooting. One suspect is in custody. And Bob is joining us from Chesapeake, Virginia. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Steve. Number one, the shooter definitely had a mental problem. Number two, with a constant daily drumbeat of racism, class envy, and victimology by CNN and MSNBC and so on, the real question that should be asked is how much did they contribute to setting the shooter off? And also this constant video game business that goes on with these kids all the time. That's my comment.
Thank you. Charlie from Herkimer, New York, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning to you also. 46 years ago, when the Supreme Court was debating Roe v. Wade, conservatives warned that if you devalue life to the point where a mother could terminate the life of her child, the consequences will be devastating. So here we are today, 60 million dead babies, mass shootings, a commonplace occurrence. It all started with Roe v. Wade.
Diane from Austin, Arkansas, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I would just like to comment that we have turned away from God. We don't raise our children in the fear and admiration of God. And if a man is led by the Spirit, he will not fulfill the lust of the flesh.
Thank you for the call. This is from the Drudge Report, the second mass shooting in 12 hours, 9 dead in Ohio. And this from Senator Bernie Sanders on the shooting yesterday in El Paso, Texas, issuing the following statement. Another mass shooting, another horrific day for America. Multiple news organizations have reported the gunman shared a racist anti-immigrant manifesto. If true, let us be clear, this would be yet another white nationalist domestic terror attack. After each of these tragedies, the U.S. Senate, intimidated by the power of the NRA, does nothing. We need a president and a Congress that listen to the American people, not the ideology of a right-wing extremist organization. The time is long overdue for Congress to stand up to the NRA and pass the common-sense gun safety legislation the American people want. We must come together as a nation to reject this dangerous and growing culture of bigotry espoused by Trump and his allies. Further, we must seriously address the scourge of violent bigotry and domestic terrorism. Instead of wasting money putting children in cages, we must treat this violent racism like the security threat that it is. That means investing in law enforcement resources to combat the growing population of white nationalists who are engaging in violence. That from Senator Bernie Sanders, a Democratic presidential candidate. And Michelin is joining us from North Carolina. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, and thanks for taking my call. Well, no guns equals no deaths. Do the math. That's one thing. It's time to abolish the Second Amendment. I'll go as far as that. Abolish it. Boom, done, no more deaths. And as far as Trump goes, it seems like Trump is a very big hero for C-SPAN. Congratulations. Trump is a national threat to this country, period. He's a national threat. It's time to remove him forcibly. Thank you so much.
We'll go to Dan joining us from Honolulu. Good morning.
Good morning, and aloha from Hawaii.
Yes.
I'd like to propose that the media should consider not promoting an agenda against race and against the American people so much. For example, I mean, every morning we have to wake up to an agenda where they're talking about Trump's a racist when he doesn't say anything that is actually mean toward to be racist, but he's actually trying to make America better. I think if we had more of a peacemaker agenda with the producers of news throughout the United States, we might have a different agenda on TV every day, and we wouldn't see all these things happening. Thank you.
Dan, thanks for the call. The 5 Sunday shows air on C-SPAN radio beginning at noon Eastern Time with NBC's Meet the Press. And among those, the programs, CNN's State of the Union, and making news this morning, Congressman Beto O'Rourke, and this question from Jake Tapper on whether or not he thinks the president is a white nationalist.
Because during one of the debates, your 2020 opponent, Governor Jay Inslee of Washington, said that President Trump is a, quote, white nationalist. That was a fairly stark accusation. Do you agree with that? Do you think President Trump is a white nationalist?
Yes, I do. And again, from some of the record that I just recited to you, the things that he has said, both as a candidate and then as the President of the United States, this cannot be open for debate. And you, as well as I, have a responsibility to call that out, to make sure that the American people understand what is being done in their name by the person who holds the highest position of public trust in this land. He does not even pretend to respect our differences or to understand that we are all created equal. He is saying that some people are inherently defective or dangerous, reminiscent of something that you might hear in the Third Reich, not something that you expect in the United States of America, based on their religion, based on their sexual orientation, based on their immigration status, based on the countries that they come from, calling those in Africa shithole nations, and saying that he'd like to have more immigration from Nordic countries, the whitest place on planet Earth today. So again, let's be very clear about what is causing this and who the president is. He is an open, avowed racist and is encouraging more racism in this country. And this is incredibly dangerous for the United States of America right now. All of us have a responsibility to stand up and be counted on this issue.
That from CNN's State of the Union, and Jake Tapper with Beto O'Rourke, and this is the headline from the Dayton Daily News. The shooting that took place earlier bar and restaurant district, confirmation of 9 people dead. The gunman would make 10, 26 others wounded or injured. It's called the Oregon District in Ohio. And yesterday, the president with this tweet, Melania and I send our heartfelt thoughts and prayers to the great people of Texas. 2 mass shootings within 13 hours, 29 dead total. Sal is joining us from Jersey City. Good morning.
Yes, hi, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I can't say enough how the people in both those cities, their families, how they're in my prayers today. I do want to say this much. Mass shootings have existed in this country since at least 1949. The first school shooting, you can go back to 1700s, 1800s. So, the thing is, this is not about politics. I don't even think it's about race. I believe that no matter what, it's about mental health. I believe that the health system that we have needs to have a lot more emphasis on mental health. I think we also need to look at areas of improving security. I mean, what do you say about a city like New York City or other cities out there who they can have the best security in the world and deal with any potential mass shootings, by having very good security systems.
Sal, thanks for the call. Mylan Burke has this: great leaders know their words have consequences. Trump is a poor leader, and now 20 are dead in El Paso, Texas. Republican Senator John Cornyn with this tweet in response to what happened in his home state, saying our hearts go out to the families of those killed and injured in El Paso today. We stand with all El Pasans in the face of the senseless violence and thank the brave El Paso police officers and the first responders. I stand ready to help. Also from Senator Ted Cruz, his wife Heidi and I are praying for everyone in El Paso as events continue to unfold. Please heed any warnings from local authorities and law enforcement and stay safe. And this is on the Wall Street Journal website, taking a look at mass shootings over the years. It's available online at WSJ.com from September of 2016. And when one person killed 5 people, a mass shooting is designated as 4 people or more killed. And according to one source, there have been more than 250 mass shootings so far this year. We'll look at this from the Wall Street Journal website and hear from Joel in Eagle, Idaho. Good morning.
Morning, Steve. Hey, a couple of general comments. First of all, I don't think you can paint all gun crimes or homicides or murders with a broad brush of gun control. Trump was very, very perceptive in his analysis. He was just talking a couple of minutes ago in your program, and he brought up the 36 flags of the Parkland shooter cruise. And that was a result of an administration policy called Progress, and they basically ignored any disciplinary action on these young kids. So that's one example. As far as Dayton goes, I think that motivation of Dayton probably is a lot different than what happened out in El Paso. something's going on in the minds of these young white shooters. It may be because they see physicians, they can afford it, whereas maybe young black kids can't get access to some of the prescribed antidepressant meds. That combined with social media outlets and maybe video games, I don't know. I'd like to see you have on some professionals that address the mental conditions of these kids. We never find out what happens with, and I know the HIPAA laws, but we never find out really what was going on in some of these kids' minds.
Well, we do know that the shooter in El Paso is in police custody, so that is likely something that will be questioned in the days and weeks ahead.
However, I can almost bet the farm that you're not going to find out anything about his medical history because it's HIPAA protected, and I think that's a mistake for our society right now. So anyway, there's no general solution. One comment I always told my kids growing up: nothing good happens in a bar after 12 o'clock at night. So good program. Thank you.
Joel, thanks for adding your voice. We'll go to Kirby, who's joining us from Glendale, Arizona. Good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to make a quick comment about the news media coverage.
Go ahead.
I feel that the news media just they run it too long on television and they cover it too much. I lived in Overland Park, Kansas, and I lived next door to a shooting range, and they had a suicide there where the guy walked in, rented a gun, shot himself. And then a week later, a guy did it again. They put it on the news, and then another week, a third person did it. So I just feel like they just overcover these things, and they're egging people on to go out and do these terrible deeds. So,
do you think Dayton could be a copycat from what happened in El Paso? There's been some speculation this morning that may be a possibility. Again, we don't know that for a fact. But your thoughts?
I don't know. They'll just have to investigate that. But I know. Like I said, I saw it there in Overland Park where they had I lived right across from that shooting range, and every day there was an event. I saw the news media there.
Patrick is next. Modesto, California. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. It's a real pleasure to talk to you. I have some information here that I got off OpenSecrets.org, and it's the top recipients from the NRA. It says here that in 2016 that the NRA spent over $11 million to support Donald Trump's campaign and donated over $19 million to groups opposing Hillary Clinton's. And it also gives the top 10 recipients in the Senate and in the House. It says that the top recipient was John McCain at $7 million, Richard Burr at $6 million, Roy Blunt at over $4 million.